Buddy, welcome to Get in the Herd After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Bond. Get in the Herd is a recovery podcast brought to you by the McShin Foundation. A bit about myself. I am Alex Bond. I work at the McShin Foundation. I am also a house leader here at one of the houses, and more importantly, a person in recovery from substance use disorder, which means that for just over a year, I have not found the need to put any mood or mind-altering substances in my body and am now a productive member of society and my community. Today, we have a motley crew of rock stars in recovery. We've got Randy, Joanna, Mike, and Johnny Fab. Joanna, Mike, and Johnny, you might recognize some returning guests, and then Randy is losing his after hours virginity tonight. Welcome, all of y'all. This is your second one?
Second time.
Oh my God. Thank you.
For him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm happy to have all of y'all on. It's going to be what Todd described as a Royal Rumble. So we'll see how that works. Let's see if anyone comes off the top rope. Randy, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on a second time. Anyways, my name is Randy Anderson, and I am a person living in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I haven't had to use any alcohol, drugs, or mood-altering substance since January 9th, 2005. And because of my recovery, I've had healthy relationships. I'm a responsible pet owner. I vote. I pay taxes. I have a job that I love. All those things that normal people do, right? Thanks. That's it. I'm from Minnesota, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Minnesota. Happy to have you on, man. My apologies. Even I don't watch all of our podcasts. I'm not going to lie to you. Joanna, how are you doing? Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that does not know you?
Well, my name is Joanna Vance, and I am from West Virginia, and I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is that I've not been bound by a life of substance use disorder since March the 13th of 2016. I am also a wife and a mother of 3 children, and they are supposed to be in bed for after hours. But if you hear them screaming in the background, I promise everyone is surviving, and we're going to make it through, and they're going to school tomorrow, and I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you.
Yay!
And Mike, I think you might be on the podcast more than anyone else. Why don't you introduce yourself to those who do not know you?
Man, I love being in the herd. I got to stay in the herd, man. No, Mike Todd, person in long-term recovery. I'm a state lead recovery advocacy project. South Carolina. Everybody be nice. I know. But no, person in long-term recovery since October 21st, 1990. And a lot of what that means to me today is like, man, I can be a grandfather of 7 grandkids, and I've been married 23 years.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah, that's what it means for me today.
That's awesome, man. Happy to have you. Johnny Fab, back at it. Why don't you introduce yourself to those who do not know you, brother?
Well, hello, everyone, my colleagues, friends. How are you? Great to be on, Alex. Thank you. And thank you, Todd. I know you're in the background somewhere. Always great to be on the show. I'm a person in recovery and a long-term recovery. And what that means to me is that my substance use condition has been in remission now since January 26, 2014. And thank you. And because of that, I'm able to show up today. I'm a husband, first and foremost, of just about 24 years. So I got you, Todd, but we've been together a lot longer than that. I've got 4 great children and 4 great grandchildren. Not great grandchildren, but you know what I mean.
Wonderful.
But I'm able to do my civic duty today, and I'm employable, and I'm able to vote. And I hope we get into a lot of that this evening, because voting recovery is something that's very, very, very important to all of us on this call with you tonight, and I look forward to the discussion.
That's awesome, and I think that's going to probably be a bit of like the highlight of our conversation, maybe in a few minutes. But one thing that I did want to ask, this is kind of open to whoever wants it.
Oh, boy.
So all of y'all are part of RAP, right? The Recovery Advocacy Project. Can one of y'all explain to the audience what that is? Because y'all are, West Virginia, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. So that's correct, right? I'm trying to make sure my memory is accurate. And so that is a wide range of geographic locations, but you're all a part of this one thing, RAP. Can someone explain what that is?
Go, Randy.
Go, Randy.
Johnny, you go. Johnny, you go ahead. All right, I'll just read. I'm going to read. I'm not going to screw this up too badly, so I'm going to read off the website. So, anyways, so the Recovery Advocacy Project, or better known as RAP to all of us, is a network of people and organizations across the country advocating for addiction recovery policies. RAP is committed to giving people in recovery, family members, and supporters of recovery the grassroots organizing tools to think and act locally. RAP is working to build a visible and effective constituency in demand of community and public policy-based solutions in response to America's, longstanding addiction crisis. So, just to elaborate on that nice statement.
Now I want Randy's version.
Yeah, so Sean and Ryan and Garrett put together and I'm sure spent hours designing that great mission. So to me, what's good for Randy in Golden Valley, Minnesota is different. What my needs are different locally than what Joanne's needs in West Virginia are, or Johnny's needs in Pennsylvania, or Mike's needs in South Carolina. This problem, and so when I talk about, like, they still like to use the word opioid epidemic, and that's whatever, but we have an addiction crisis, and we have a lot of epidemics occurring simultaneously in the addiction crisis. We have an opioid epidemic, we have an alcohol epidemic, we have a methamphetamine epidemic. I mean, we have a pornographic epidemic. It's still addiction, right? Yeah. But what my needs are in Minnesota, or even more specifically in Golden Valley, Minnesota, are much different than what Mike needs in South Carolina, or Johnny needs in Pennsylvania, or Joanne needs in West Virginia. And so what RAP does is it's giving us, like, what do I need in my community to make life better or improve the health of those suffering from addiction and those family members that are part of that. So what are the tools I need to do that? And that's what RAP is doing. It gives us those local tools, and it's building a network of constituency of people to work locally and act locally, because this will never be solved in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry to break that to you all. We need their money, because that's where the tax, like we all pay taxes. So we need the funding from them, but they need to let us to decide what to do with that funding. So yes, we need those Washington people, but they're never going to fix that sitting up on Capitol Hill. That's my version. So there you go.
No, that sounds very valid. I mean, the grassroots movement is wonderful. Working with local politicians is definitely more effective that I've found in my very short time in the recovery community thus far. But when you mentioned something important that I think it's what your needs are is going to be very different than what Johnny's needs in Pennsylvania are. But there are some sort of commonalities. I've talked with y'all personally that generally the number one need is probably recovery housing. Is that correct across the board?
That's one.
Well, that's one. In Minnesota, okay. I always say I'm really lucky in Minnesota. I come from, so a lot of people call us the land of 10,000 lakes, right? If you live here and you're in this field or industry, I call it the land of 10,000 treatment centers. Like we have more treatment and recovery than a lot of states do. And we have tons of, and like access to treatment in Minnesota isn't really our biggest concern. There's tons of housing. There can always be more. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we like that. You're right though, Alex. Like that's a common thing we all need is more supportive recovery housing. But I'm lucky in Minnesota that I have a lot of that. And so again, my need in Minnesota isn't the same as the need in, other, and I'll let these guys tell you what, like when the recovering housing, yes, I could use more, but I have a lot here in Minnesota.
Okay. And Mike, you kind of disagreed too a little bit. And I don't want to delve too much into a systematic ranking of what's most important in what state. Yeah. I'm just trying to kind of open up a dialogue so different people can understand why it might not be as why certain areas are asking for certain things, because you can't ask, say, as Randy was saying, Congress for 20 different things at the same time. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. So, Mike, what was kind of your disagreement there? Or
no, I was agreeing. I mean, the same thing. South Carolina is kind of wild west of recovery housing. No certifications process. We are working on a NAR affiliate, making some progress with that, but we are so wide open. I mean, we've got like
tell them what NAR is, Mike, because we often talk with these terms and people don't know what we're talking about. So I just wanted all of us, when we say acronyms, let's make sure we're at least describing that acronym. I know what it means, but people watching right now may have no idea what it means.
I'm so glad you're here, man. No, seriously, no. The National Alliance for Recovery Residences, who set the standards nationally. And we do have the South Carolina Alliance for Recovery Residences that's working on that certifications process. But I mean, here it's like work camps, 70, like get a job and find Jesus and get yourself. And I'm not trying to down Christianity, but like it's still the housing kind of coincides with that moral failing. And so even to the point like the program that I have, Freedom Recovery Center, is one of the very, very few in the state that actually work with medically assisted treatment, which I would rather define as treatment. We're one of the few housing providers that actually work within that. So anybody can open up a recovery residence in South Carolina. There's no registration. We've got a long, and Randy, no, I was agreeing with Randy. We have a long way to go in recovery housing in South Carolina, but we're making a lot of progress. We really are. We're moving pretty well. But that's just one thing in South. Don't get me stick. I mean, there's so many other things.
That's cool. And you brought up something like, so medically assisted treatment has been a pretty divisive topic for, I think, going on maybe like 15 years now. I think, Suboxone kind of came on the scene around 2009, or maybe that's when it kind of came into the zeitgeist at least. And even now that it's been tested and, with price gouging and I don't know, the whole Suboxone industry has gotten a lot more volatile and become exactly what it is, an industry instead of a tool. I was kind of curious y'all's opinions on it now. I know it can be very helpful as a tool, but I don't know if the necessary solution is end all be all, take a pill or take a strip for the rest of your life. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
So, I'll jump in here a second. I think when you had said earlier about, I think Randy said it, he said letting politicians decide where the money goes is something that this initiative with Mobilize Recovery, with the Recovery Advocacy Project, is pushing that vote recovery initiative. We're working to build effective constituency to demand public policy solutions. And by doing that, we are in fact empowering voters not to pick red, pick blue, pick any color, pick something, pick what those stand on those issues, because each one of us on here, Randy, Mike, Joanna, we all have issues that are important to us. There's certain reasons why I'm in this field, and there's certain reasons that I'm doing this advocacy, but we're in silos where we all got these different initiatives. But now we finally have a chance if we come together as 23 million plus. And I'll bet you that number is askew. I think there's many people that weren't even measured that they're in recovery or were so stigmatized they wouldn't say they are in recovery. So what I'm saying is that we first and foremost, we all have issues. We have access to healthcare, criminal justice reform, race relations, expansion of medically assisted treatment, recovery housing regulations. Everybody's I don't know everything about everything, but what's great is that we have this network of individuals across the country that can bring these issues to the forefront with our elected officials. And now we have a chance to say who we're electing into power. How do you care about my issues? And that biggest thing is, Randy said, we won't let them decide where the money goes, because they won't give it to us. So we need to get people in there that have our issues at the front of their minds, that are supportive of regulating recovery housing, that are looking into medically assisted treatment and how that's going there, access to healthcare. For myself, and these aren't my words, they're taken from someone else, is that if you're pro-recovery and you want to dismantle Medicaid, you better take a look at what you support in this movement, because, I'm here today because I have Medicaid, because I got into it with publicly funded treatment. I wouldn't be, I'd be sitting in a jail cell and probably dead without it. So if you're in recovery, the next best thing of helping someone out is by understanding where your politicians stand on issues that are important to you in your recovery and voting recovery. Mm-hmm. Get off my soapbox. Sorry.
No, is there
soapbox?
Is there some sort of, because I've heard rumors of some sort of list, because this isn't it's a huge task, but how does the average voter parse through who's pro-recovery and who's not pro-recovery if I'm voting in my next local election? Because a lot of people either do vote on party lines, but for me, I'm more like issue lined than I am anything else. So is there some sort of like tool or system? Like, how do you recommend those vote pro-recovery if it's kind of hard to figure out who is and who isn't?
So I'm going to chime in here.
Please.
Yes.
We have launched the vote recovery platforms in numerous states and regions across the nation. And the West Virginia vote recovery platform has gotten a significant amount of signatures that we're sending out to all of the candidates here in West Virginia. Hang on, I actually have here's a sample ballot from Boone County, West Virginia that I got from the courthouse today that has everybody's stuff on it. And we're getting it from all of the rest, especially, Attorney General, U.S. Senator, U.S. House of Representatives. And we are sending out our vote recovery platform, nonpartisan, to all of the candidates and inviting them to come and to speak on why they vote recovery and why they stand with recovery. That way that the voting bloc here in West Virginia has the opportunity to see which candidates actually stand with the recovery community and who we can vote for, and then hopefully follow through and see them follow through with what they say they're going to do.
That's awesome.
And I want to add to that, Joanna. So what the key to this though is the listening sessions. Like, right, they're happening all over the country right now in different states, different communities. Like as a Region 5 lead, like Indiana has been doing a ton of listening sessions because we want to build the platform off of what people want, like their needs are. That's how you get the support. So you have a listening session, you might get 10, like things that they say, this is what we want. And then you have to drill down, like, what are the top three? You have to come to some kind of consensus that these are the top 3 issues for our area. That is our recovery platform. So what is in West Virginia platform could look a lot different in Indiana and Minnesota and Pennsylvania and South Carolina. But I mean, we all have some commonality, like you were saying before, Alex, like we all want to reduce stigma, right? We know stigma actually probably kills more people every year than drugs itself does. So, I mean, that's one thing I've always seen, like all the platforms is a pretty common theme, but it happens locally. Again, it's these listening sessions that determine the platform. That's sorry, I had to jump in there, Joanna.
No, how do you find those then? Like, how do I I'm consider myself pretty plugged into the recovery community, and I wouldn't even know where to begin in finding one of these listening sessions.
Virginia's about to be having theirs very soon.
Someone's doing one tonight, right? Yeah. How do you find them? So you can go on recoveryvoices. That's
the link you shared down there, Johnny.
recoveryvoices.com.
Okay.
You can go there. We have a Vote Recovery hub now, which is really cool.
Yep.
And if you're on social media, if you're friends with any of us, or it's hard to miss it because I mean we're always posting and reposting and overposting and all that fun stuff. But there's a lot of ways to find it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like it's such a quality tool. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, in South Carolina, same thing, listening session. And I just want to get this right. So I pulled it up on my phone and we came up with voices at the table. Nothing about us without us. I mean, could you imagine having legislation around minority issues and not having representation with minorities in the room? I mean, it's ridiculous. So that was our first one. Our second one, voices for harm reduction. I really feel like South Carolina is like ready for a harm reduction bill. We've got one sitting in the Senate. It's kind of stagnated in a medical committee or whatever. I think it's kind of dead, but we need to like resuscitate it. And then voices reducing stigma. So that's what, these listening sessions. I mean, it when you're sitting in it, it's kind of like what we're doing here. There's a lot of different, discussions. You're like, oh my God, what are we going to do from this? But recovery advocate, especially the national leadership and regional leadership is so good at like taking it and just funneling it into like 3 issues and really getting us honed in. So, and it was a really incredible process. It was fantastic. They did an excellent job.
Yeah, no, and the main problem that I could see is in these listening sessions, everyone pointing at the problem or maybe 20 different problems and then saying, now what? Like, how do you concisely come up with some sort of solution, let alone one that's politicized enough to make it across both aisles, across, a House and a Senate? So are solutions come up, like well thought out solutions in these listening sessions? Like, what's that process look like? Because, I'm pretty good at finding out what the problem is, but I don't have any solutions on this podcast, man. I'll be honest with you.
I'll chime in a second. I would say historically, there has never been this kind of movement around doing this. If you asked me 6 months ago during a Pennsylvania RAP meeting that we had at town hall, a question was asked about what does a recovery voter look like? And, some of this sort of just spawned out of that. And, that's the deal, isn't it? That's the deal. What does a recovery voter look like?
Yeah.
And now we get this sort of honed in. And as Randy talked about, and Mike talked about, and Joanna, there are those commonalities that we all kind of share, reducing stigma. We all know that. We all know getting into treatment. We can find our commonalities and we can agree on a certain set of issues and have that broad voter base that are agreeing on those common issues. And then we can work together. And historically, we've been siloed when it comes to those issues. I go back to what I said earlier of everyone like kind of just trying to push their own thing. And so it's people. I'm not saying we haven't had great success with that. There have been a lot of programs, a lot of things that have started with just someone having an idea and passing a piece of legislation. But, again, look at that block of people across this country. If we're coming together on common issues to elect officials that are going to not just listen to our stories, bring us in and pat me on the back and say, tell them how you got better, Johnny, and then walk out and take everything I said about what I need and disregard it. Damn it, I'm tired of it. I mean, there's 23 million of us that are at the table all the time talking about these issues, but we never get any action from it. And the way we get action is by having our electing officials that are going to not only listen to us, but are going to follow through with that. That makes sense.
Well, I think it's also important, Johnny, to point out, is that so now that we can connect nationally, like what a problem you may have in Pennsylvania, maybe I've already solved that problem in Minnesota. And now I have a roadmap to give you and say, Johnny, here's the map. You might have to, alter it or take a few different turns to get to your solution. But that's the beauty now is we also are talking all the time. And so we don't have to feel like, God, I can't fix this. But wait, they fixed it in South Carolina or they fixed it in West Virginia. Let's don't reinvent the wheel. Let's use what somebody's already done with a solution and let's go with that. So I just want to throw that in there. That's super important.
No, Randy, great point. I was on the phone a week or two ago with the guy that heads up our opioid subcommittee in the House. And that was a big thing. I said, look, we're connected with all these other states that have passed harm reduction, that have done things with syringe exchange, for instance, Minnesota. And if you would like to talk to someone from that state, we have that available for you. And I mean, and he even told me, he says, he called it needle exchange, but he says, I just don't think I can ever, support that. And I said, you know what? We're talking about it. That's what matters. I mean, we're actually having a dialogue on the phone about it. So, but great point. And you and I have talked about it because obviously South Carolina does not have a syringe exchange. Fentanyl strips are considered paraphernalia, all that stuff. But you and I have talked about Minnesota, Pennsylvania. We can glean off of each other and help each other because listen, I know that South Carolina is like dragging the cow's butt, so to speak. I mean, I get that, but Johnny, it's just, I get that, but we can all work together to bring South Carolina up because, and so anyway.
Yeah, Joanna, you got to jump in when you get a chance too. Don't be afraid. Otherwise, us three will talk all freaking night.
Yeah, so. Joanna, what's going on in West Virginia?
I was actually about to ask because Mike seems to think, or maybe it is. I don't know, that South Carolina is a bit behind the eight ball more than he would expect or want it to be. I think that's probably true for all of y'all. You just want more for your respective region. And not to be maybe judgmental or stereotypical, but I think that West Virginia might be the most stigmatized state in the entire union. So I'd kind of like to hear Joanna's opinion, or your opinion, Joanna, on if you think that is deserving or if that is just a complete, if you guys are doing better than what other people would expect, or maybe your thoughts on that.
So when you look at numbers and statistics and the money that we get, West Virginia is certainly last in the nation for everything.
Oh,
all right.
Wow.
But when you look at the recovery community and the people and their heart here in West Virginia, like, we have the opportunity to take our advocacy up to the front and the foremost to be heard. Like, so not bragging, we have, we're ready for legislature this year. Like, we're getting ready to storm the Capitol, Recovery Day, doing policy and change. Like, we're past thoughts and prayers. We are on to policy and change.
There we go.
Multiple pathways to recovery, medication-assisted recovery, 12 steps, solo, reform and reentry, harm reduction, faith-based, all of these people coming together for this, because I'm just, I vote purple. I steal that from John, there at the McShin. But when it comes down to it, whoever wins president, whoever wins governor, whoever wins whatever, the recovery community is still going to be doing what the recovery community is doing. And we're going to make it past that. What they're going to look at, though, and what matters the most, these elected officials, all they care about is the votes, the people that vote. Are you registered to vote? The numbers that you have behind you. And that's the kind of stuff that we're gathering today. That way we can tell them in these upcoming years before the next elections, like, yes, we are the new voting bloc for politics, in not just in West Virginia, in the United States, period.
Yeah, just imagine for a minute if we got all, like, not just the people actually like that identify as in recovery, but what is it when we learned, like, it's, we talk about the family members, and what is it, 85, 90 million people that are supportive of recovery issues, right? That, like, so Minnesota, when we passed our opioid bill last year and we held the pharmaceutical companies accountable, we told these legislators, if you don't support us, we will vote you out. We got people from their districts to say, and I call it a constituency of consequence. So either you're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we will vote you out. And I'm telling you, though, it works. And that's what the recovery community, it doesn't happen overnight, right? But we have an opportunity, and we're organizing and getting, I just see the progress even made during COVID, like all these town halls and the recovery platforms. And, Nevada, of course, they have Ryan and the team there that are pushing it harder than anyone because, they're kind of the lead. But I really see, even during COVID, how much progress we've just made in this listening sessions and recovery platforms and like building that constituency. Like, that's the infrastructure, right? So, yeah, but.
No, I think that's a fair point, especially like Mike, I got you in a sec. So the problem that I see with this, because I'm a cynic, yes, 80 million people, sure. Do you really think that those 80 million people, recovery is their number one priority? Most people vote issues based and based on the personalities, on how likable, literally just how likable the political official is. So not only are people voting with their gut, but they're voting on issues counter to recovery because they're just different issues in general. I know a lot of people who have different priorities. Like I just know people personally who are in recovery, but that's not their number one priority.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to be cynical, but that's just facts from my experience.
Hey, and I'm sorry, I just got to add. So Alex,
Absolutely.
It reminds me, Mike, I'm sorry. I wanted, about in 2014 or 15, when I joined our largest treatment association, Minnesota, I identified a problem right away because of my felony. I was disqualified to work in the field. And I thought, and this wasn't a priority. And so I started to make some waves, which I may do once in a while. And I got them to put it on the list, but on the list meant 12th or 13th on the priority list. But I just kept pushing and pushing. And finally I got it moved up into the top 5 and then 3. And then last year we passed a bill about it, making it easier. We still have more work to do, but it took since 2015. So 4 years for me to push that up the list. So like Alex is saying, we're not going to start at the top of the list, Alex, right? But we got to just keep pushing and moving it up the list, right? That's the way I look at it. And it's a process. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Get in there, Hush.
Yeah. No, listen, I just want to say this. When I hear Joanna talk, I feel like throwing a chair through a window. It's just, listening to these young people, and that, absolutely, man. This is where this is going to change, man. We've got some young folks, and I'm so proud of them. That are coming along, and even some young folks in South Carolina. And this is because that old guard's going to leave South Carolina, and I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. Every state race, what I have to listen to, and you've heard me say this, Alex, is they're out trying to Christian each other. I go to church more than this guy. Yeah. And the other thing is guns and abortion. And I get it. I'm kind of conservative. I love my guns. Okay. I'll admit it. But here's the thing, that's all you hear about. And so we've got to keep beating this drum. We've got to create our own platforms like we're doing here. And in the Joannas of, and man, I'm telling you, change is coming, man. And I wish you could have seen it 30 years ago when I first got in recovery. I was so marginalized. I would have never, ever thought I would see or be a part of something like this. My God, I might cry. But anyway, I won't get to Johnny Fab, man, because
Hold on. Wait,
Johnny
we gotta-
Fab. No, Randy, you
I know,
have
but I'm just
turn.
gonna say,
You
it's
have
no
turn.
longer-
Johnny Fab's
we're
gonna
not-
lay
Easy,
there.
guys.
No.
We're no longer
Johnny
going to have us. We don't want. I don't look at it. I don't want to sit at their table. We're going to start inviting them to sit at our table, right?
that's right.
Johnny, what you got?
Johnny Fab's about to lay it down for you, Alex, about how we are building a constituency in numbers and how we're going to make the recovery platform the actual voting block, and people are going to recognize it as a
Wow,
single
that
issue.
was a big lead up. I hope I don't disappoint there. But Alex, I want to give you some validation of what you said. But you said, recovery isn't at the forefront. And I think that for so long, that has been the issue that has kept us from making progress, because we have been just in an area, in a state, going like, what can I do to impact or change this? And recovery is not at the forefront, when the answer to that is being answered with the Recovery Advocacy Project and what we're doing across the United States. Now that one voice in West Virginia, that voices in Michigan, those voices in South Carolina, the voices in Virginia, all across this country are now coming together and working together to put that at the forefront. Like Randy said in what he said, I pushed and pushed and pushed, and it took forever for me to get this up the ladder. Imagine, you said 80 million, maybe 100 million, 1 in 3 families are impacted by substance use disorder. So across this country, we're losing hundreds of people a day, more than COVID has ever done, more than anything else has ever done. Addiction has decimated our communities for centuries upon centuries, and we sit back and say, we can't change it. I can't change it, is what they say. Now we can do something different. We can put together those communities of consequence. We can amplify our voices by working together with our allies, working together without being separate on our issues, and working together, all of us. We've been so long, that's why we lose progress. It's why we don't get the funding that we have. Every single issue that we go for, it's because we're not united in our progress. And I think that when we bring this together, of course, voting recovery platform is new. It's something that is being introduced. But you know what, Mike, like you just said, I'm not going to be around forever doing this, but damn it, I hope I'm on an in the herd 30 years from now to see that we have a president in recovery voted through the recovery platform. Tell me I'm dreaming too big, but I'll tell you what, Marty Mann, when she sat at a table thinking of putting together an organization that thought about alcoholism being disease, didn't have anyone behind her. She raised her voice, and then she got across the country organizations to start elevating her voice. And look what the change we have. I'm here today because of her. I think most of us are. If this wasn't designated as an illness, we'd be rotting in a jail somewhere. That's where I would be. But we now have a chance. John says it in the movie The Anonymous People. I say, let's make history. I think we're about to start making history. I think that we are. And if we keep elevating these voices, that we're going to create true change across this country and maybe impact. We act locally, and we impact globally.
Yeah. No, and that's the motto in my head is think and act locally. And then there's kind of like a domino effect that just starts happening as people look over here and say, well, why is it still working over here, there? One thing I wanted to mention was I think that I might underrate how certain laws affect a recovery community that aren't recovery laws. An example that would really affect me is a mandatory minimum sentence. I believe that I should have consequences for my actions, but I think a mandatory minimum sentence would affect a recovery community vastly. And you've got a T-shirt on that says like felon. Should certain substances I think there should be some sort of, I don't like the word decriminalization, reclassification of drugs that would affect the recovery community, even though it's not recovery laws. You know what I'm saying? I think we have a big idea of what that looks like. But what about a suspended license every time that you get caught with substances? Those don't equate to equal things. So I think there's a lot of other stuff that could also help, is all I'm saying.
So I think we need to approach criminal justice the way we are starting to, in many parts of the country, approach how we treat substance use disorder, is individualized, right? It's the one size model does not fit all, does not work, and it doesn't work with the laws either. So mandatory minimums are shit. Excuse my language, but they don't work. Like, because what? So we're trying, and we have a trial, what's it called, when you probation thing, but we're doing what's called dosage probation in a couple of counties here in Minnesota. And so we're giving out the sentences of the probation based on the individual, like what's your circumstances and this and that. So it's a pilot project. That's what they call it. So we have 2 pilots going right now on dosage probation. But so I'm going to say it. So I think, like, if you look at Portugal, like, they actually have a really good model. Honestly, they don't treat addiction as a criminal justice issue. It's treated as a healthcare issue, but it still has a criminal element. If you repeat enough times, you get in trouble, right? If you're selling drugs at like a drug dealer level, you get in trouble. But what they do is it is decriminalized. So I will start with I don't think any person should be put or incarcerated or put in jail for simple possession or drug use, period. My personal thought. But if you have a trunk full of heroin, okay, you're trafficking. Yes, you should probably go to prison for a long time. No question about it. But we can't, I mean, we know, what is it? 80% of the prison population, probably more, meet the criteria for a substance use disorder. And we're not treating those people. So you sit in jail, you sit in prison for months, years, you get no help for your disease. You get out and your disease starts where it left off, period. So in Minnesota, it costs about $45,000 a year to incarcerate one person. What I tell my legislators or my elected officials, you give me that person and give me the $45,000, and I'll invest in the individual. I'll put them in housing. I'll put them through school. I'll get them a good job. I'll get them educated. Your return on your investment for that $45,000 will be unbelievable. Now, I can't save them all, right? So, and we know that, and I say that, but imagine if I changed the trajectory of 50% of them. If I changed the life trajectory of 50% of them, do you know how much money I save the system? I mean, I can't even imagine. So anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox and let someone else chime in.
No, even the Republicans in South Carolina understand that, Randy. I mean, when you start talking to them about dollars and cents, you know, like, I mean, they get that. But, you know, one of the things, like, and I've heard Rich talk about this, I mean, quit peeing down my leg and telling me it's raining. You know, they sit there and say, yes, this is a disease. Yes, this is a disease. But on the other hand, they don't treat it as a disease whatsoever. If they treated it as a disease, syringe exchange wouldn't even be it wouldn't even be a question, you know? So anyway, no, thanks for when that came up, I knew that was your question, man.
So, you know, but if you look at it, we have some issues, and these are issues that we need to sit down with legislators to actually discuss. And what I mean by that is that if we all of a sudden said, oh, we get it now, what happens? You know, we cause millions of people to now, there's 12 or 15 people that were allowed when I was on a diversion program, recovery court, that were permitted to be part of that. And the rest went to prison. All of those stories are the same as me. I was just privileged enough to get a spot on that team, a spot on that court. So, you know, what is the idea of not just saying, well, why shouldn't we do that with everyone that has a substance use disorder? Well, you're going to empty the damn jails is what's going to happen. You're going to overcrowd the treatment centers is what's going to happen. So, you know, a lot of it's fear. You know, if you believe it's a disease, and I love that. It feels like you're pissing down my leg here and telling me it's raining. I'm going to use that 100 times. I love that. That sounds some like no internet having stuff right there. I love it. But think about it. if we decriminalize, if we reclassify, like you said, and we get rid of prisons and we start treating people the way they are, a lot of big people are going to lose a lot of big money. And that, so if we have the right politicians in place that are going to listen and take action and understand these things, then we can affect true change. And I'll get off my soapbox because I got to go change my drawers. I got piss on my leg.
No, I love your soapbox.
Well, Joanna, I'd like to know your opinion on this. So there are two kind of different approaches on this. You can go something super extreme, like the Portugal model, which, I also agree is a great model. What it looks like in the U.S. is probably not that, if I'm honest. Or a more safer, practical, pragmatic route, which is kind of something that the U.S. continuously does. And so I want to know your opinion on if it makes sense to, ask for so much only to get shut down, or to keep asking for a little until it reaches what we want it to reach.
So what we are going to do this year here in West Virginia when it comes to reform and reentry legislature, policy, I don't know, I'm still learning all the lingo. So if I say it wrong, help me explain it to me later. But it goes right back to the community listening forums that we were talking about earlier. So we held those community listening forums to figure out our vote recovery platforms and what the key elements in those platforms were. Well, especially here in West Virginia, reform and reentry is a key element in our platform. So after election, because everything's too divided now or anything to have community inclusion in all of us with politics, after election, we're going to have community listening forums for each of those key components of our platforms. So that way, a reform and reentry community listening forum, that way every single one, the West Virginia ACLU, the West Virginia Families of Convicted People, the reform and reentry councils, all of those people can come and say, these are issues here in West Virginia that we are fighting. Here is the legislation that we've tried to pass before, and this is what we would like to see. So therefore, we can go ahead and fight for what we've been trying to pass, and then go ahead and add on to what we want to see. Does that answer anything?
No, yeah, that's actually a great answer, because if I understand correctly, you can look up past bills, see what didn't work about them, retool them, and then have another bill where you're asking for something different. Is that right?
Or even have the same bill that got denied with more people standing behind it, advocating for it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm learning about it just as much. Honestly, all I do is talk and ask questions. So y'all are educating me just as much as the audience is. Is that what y'all's? Is that kind of similar for y'all's areas, Mike, Johnny, and Randy? Is that a similar approach?
I don't know what Randy's holding up. No, but it real interesting that Joanna was bringing this up, because
this is a great idea.
We do have to speak their language. I was just on prior to this today. I was on a video conference with Christina Dent. And she does an amazing job framing harm reduction, framing the criminal justice. Framing everything from a right to life conservative point of view. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God. And she's from Mississippi. And she is just going around having basically town halls and changing just hearts and minds. I mean, it's amazing, taking conservative, Republican, right wings, and she frames it in a way that they have no other way but to go, oh. I mean, it's real.
Yeah, so it's important to tailor your message to your audience, no matter what that audience. So when I can talk to Democrats, Republicans, but honestly, I have a friend so I always make fun of my friend Gina Evans. She's a fellow board member of mine on the Second Chance Coalition. Gina's a conservative. She speaks conservative. So when I want to go talk to really talk to one of our Republican legislators, one of our I bring Gina with, because Gina speaks their language, and Gina understands it. No, Gina, I need you to come with me because I don't speak conservative as fluently as you do. But when you do that, you change hearts and minds by delivering the message correctly, right, Mike? That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and making it palatable at the same time. I mean, no one wants anything like any crazy change shoved down their throats. It has to, honestly, it has to be to my advantage. What do I get out of it? Is how a lot of politicians think in my head.
What do
And
my
even
voters get out of
even
it?
what a lot of people think is how does this affect me? You know what I'm saying? So there and Mike, you're from like a conservative state, so do y'all have different sort of like tactics when you go about that? I mean, Randy, you said you bring along a conservative friend because I imagine that's because you're dealing with a more conservative, politician. So do you guys just have different factions of people to help with different narratives, I guess?
Well, yeah, it's like we had our state.
Just seems counterintuitive because everyone's going to be voting at some point, regardless of.
Yeah, we were on our state call tonight, and Christina Dent was on that state call, and that was part of the thing that I was saying. I was like, listen, guys, I mean, you and I don't mean this in a bad way. I vote really down the middle, but I'm like, listen, we can't go in there like raging liberals. Like we don't go in there with your Bernie hat on or whatever. I mean, and I know we get excited and stuff, but my heart and mind changed just a few years ago. I mean, just a few years ago, I was anonymous. I mean, if you came to my program and did what I did, then I'd help you. If you came to my home group but all that's changed. So I can really, what I'll have some of these guys do, because they've got the gray beard and the gray hair too, they'll pull me to the side and say, I'm going to say something to you I wouldn't say to them. But, I want to say this, Joanna, I'm going to tell you something. You really frame things, and I want to encourage you. You really frame things well. I mean, you really do. It's amazing. But you've got these young folks like Joanna. That here they come, but we're kind of the one. I would say I'm the guy that's kind of buffering them. I'm the buffer guy.
It's funny. I was asked once when you said the light your hair on fire liberal. I was asked. We were doing a press conference for probation reform last year. I was wearing this shirt. I mean, right, probation reform, and it was a conservative group that was doing the press conference because they supported it. They asked me not to participate in the press conference because this would be too polarizing for their conservative constituents or their conservative. So I'm like, and they thought they were really hurting my feelings. Like, no, if you guys think this will get more people to help our cause, I can stand out, no problem. Like, I won't participate. But you're right. Like, this was too much for them at their conservative press conference, right?
Sure.
That's something I want to touch on that real quick. And I have great mentors that helped me along the way. That's been doing this for a long time. But when it comes to wearing shirts and clothes and everything, trust and believe, I'm going to be rolling up to the Capitol for the Governor's Council, everything like in my Converse and my recovery t-shirt. My husband even asked me, he was like, Joanna, are you going to go buy a business suit? And I'm like, for what? Why would I do that? No. They picked me for this position and people want me to speak at this stuff. And I'm not going to dress up the person that I am because I got these positions and these like speaking engagements, and then to be able to empower other people to do the same thing, not by dressing up and being somebody fancy, but by being myself.
No, that's really awesome. And I think keeping the authenticity while trying to create a narrative and a message that is palatable is a hard balance to find. For example, Johnny Fab, I see pictures of you in suits all the time. I also see TikToks of you being a goofball. So like trying to find that balance is not easy, but I think that you've done a really good job in that, and kind of would wonder maybe some advice to others. Like when I advocated at the Capitol, I put on a button down and a tie and I spoke because I wanted to destigmatize drug addicts. You know what I'm saying? My mentality, and what you're saying, Joanna, makes perfect sense, is keeping your authenticity. But in my head, I don't want people like me to continue to get a bad name. So I will dress like a productive member of society. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I think is this, and Randy alluded to it earlier about finding someone that speaks that language. And what I mean by that is that, you know, you're an advocate no matter what you do, where you go. But when I'm at the Capitol and I'm talking to legislators, I have to be presentable. So I'm that. And you'll find me 10 minutes later in a pair of Converse in the backyard playing hopscotch with my grandkid. You know, that's what it is. You know, that's who we are. But for so long, we have made it that we are vulnerable and shared our voices and our stories with our legislators. And I think that, you know, when I say I have, Randy has, Mike has, Joanna has, Alex, obviously you have, but now we're a we. So there are more of us to talk the different stories and to talk to different legislators, different parties, you know, raging liberals, Republicans, whatever it is. I'm not trying to look at those lines. I'm trying to look at humans, human beings. And for far too long, I have seen our voices co-opted. And what I mean by that is that we'll share what's going on in our communities, and then we'll somehow our voices will be co-opted to make it some sort of politician's new baby that they did for this area, you know, that gets them elected. And then what are you doing for me tomorrow? That's great. I love it. Lots of legislation, but we have so much work to do. And that key word is we. I can't do it all myself. Randy can't, Mike can't, Joanna can't, Alex can't, but together we can impact so much more change. And I think, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier, is that those silos, we're still in them. Dude, it's going to take us a while to unite the voices of a recovery across this nation to start making serious change. Just hosting me listening forums. We're at the beginning of something that is going to be incredible, and God knows it. You know, I've tried to impact change in my community. It started small. It got bigger. It got bigger. And if we all do that on a local level, it will change across the nation. It won't happen overnight. Probably I'll be in the ground for a long time. Y'all become, Joanna will, you know, Mike will be gone way before all of this.
Yeah.
You know, but what I'm just saying is that, you know, I'm so grateful each and every day to watch all of you all do what you do, and everyone across this country do it, because it keeps me going. It keeps me going, and I know it keeps Randy going. It's the fuel he runs off of. I know it keeps Mike going. I know what keeps Joanna going. Alex, I don't know what keeps you going. It might be 2 Red Bulls and some bubble gum, but I'll figure it out down the road.
Energy gum. This is actually energy gum.
See, but you know, I'll get off my soapbox by just ending with, you know, when I went and spoke in the Capitol the first time, when I was asked to speak at Advocacy Day, I had it all written on paper, and I had a suit on, and I was pointing my fingers, and I was yelling from the halls, but I followed history and those who had mentored me and told me, you know, the history of the recovery movement. And I spoke about Howard Hughes and about, if the choir won't sing the praises of God, who will? We're here every day. Our families are impacted, all of us together. If we all join together and sing those praises, we can impact change. And I'll shut up because I'm gonna make myself cry now.
No, I just want to say, man, listen, I'm gonna be the old dude in the suit, right? But I'm gonna stand by the Joannas and say, hey, all us old dudes in these suits, they're coming.
Hey,
I'm with them. It's gonna be like John Lewis, man. We're gonna get in, you know, we're gonna get in some good trouble, right? It's coming. I'm telling you.
I'm gonna be the one that all the old dudes is like, I told her to dress up and wear this.
The first time I testified, Joanna, the picture I was showing you, the first time I testified at my state capitol, I was wearing this T-shirt.
Yeah, I just want to say something. I know we're getting up towards the time here, but I just want to say, when I say we, we must make a space for everyone in this movement.
Yes.
And that includes those that are still actively using drugs. We must make it an inclusive space all around. For far too long, there have been so many strong opinions about what recovery is, what it looks like. Ooh, well, I'm scared of talking about this or talking about that. It might not be your platform, but we need to still create spaces to include everyone in this process, everyone.
What is advocacy?
We were all once them, right?
Right.
Don't forget where you came from, brother. That's what I say.
That's right. What is advocacy if we leave anyone behind? It's futile. If we leave one group or person behind, it's not advocacy. So great point, Johnny. Thank you.
It was
that's valid. And
it was very painful to see a good friend isolated from the recovery community on his thoughts and beliefs. And we all know what I'm talking about. And we were very good friends. And I never want to see a space like that again. So that's my mission moving forward, is to make that sure that we have a space for everyone that has a voice.
That's beautiful, man. I wanted to ask one question, and this hopefully it doesn't open like a huge can of worms. I don't think it will, but with this squad, I don't know what'll happen. Johnny, you mentioned, and I think everyone would agree, we are in the early stages of the recovery movement, correct? So if we're in the early stages, what does the next stage look like? How do we know when we're in the next stage? Joanna, you look stoked.
Say
You
we're
go
in
first.
the early stages of the recovery movement. I say we're in a transitioning stage of the recovery movement. The recovery movement has been around forever, but now we're transitioning into something completely different. Completely different.
Yeah, maybe in the early stages of the recovery advocacy movement. Maybe if that's a better way to put it. I'm just trying to kind of repurpose what you were saying. So, what does that next stage, regardless of what we want to call it, look like? How do we know when we're in that next stage, Joanna?
That next stage looks like when you have people like us in recovery running for state legislature, running for county commission, running for Congress, and we have I got chills, and we have a whole entire voting block, national voting block behind us, because we vote purple and we vote recovery, and we put them out.
Yeah, man. When we have that that NRA of recovery, right? I mean, that's where I see it. I see us like being this huge voting block, this huge voice, and these passionate, wonderful young people coming forward to run for office. I mean, I see this. I mean, I really see this. But we've got to break through and have kind of that, like I was getting to that John Lewis good trouble. We gotta get some. This has got to be like a civil rights movement. It really does. Randy's got the damn bullhorn out. I got the bullhorn behind me. I mean, absolutely. I'm so excited, guys. And I want to say this, but listen, 30 years ago, I would have, if I can make it till October 21st, one day at a time, man, 30 years, dinosaur kind of. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is, I mean, if you would have lived back then and saw how marginalized we were, I mean, we were nothing, and I hate to even use this term, but we were nothing but just crackheads. I mean, that was, and even on the news, hold on a second, but even on the news, we were told that crack addicts would never, ever recover. And I'm going to tell you today, that's bullshit.
Former crack addict right there.
That's right, because I'm here today. Randy's here today, and I mean, it's just I get filled with gratitude every day when I go, oh my God, how far we've come. So
I want to expand off just quickly what Joanne said. Not only will we run for office, right now, I guarantee you there are many elected officials that sit in positions like that are in recovery, but they're too damn afraid to say it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Not only will we run and hold more offices, those that are currently there that are afraid because of the stigma of the disease won't be afraid to admit anymore that they're part of the recovery people, right?
Well, look at the way the country was going Operation Freedom, where we had stars coming out and talking about that some 30 years ago. Mike, you were around then. I wasn't. I'm just saying our country was heading in one direction, but it was because of policies, failed drug war policies, that we are where we are now. And we've all said it. We've all used that voice. But the difference is we're all saying it together as a constituency of consequence. And when they go to that ballot, when that person goes out on that campaign trail, they're going to know this voting block is something to reckon with.
Beautiful. Randy, any final thoughts, buddy?
My final thoughts are I love you all, and I appreciate all the work you do. And I know I'm just going to, on a personal note, I know I haven't been as involved as I'd like to be lately because I have a family member in crisis like I was 16 years ago. And now I'm responsible for making sure I don't have to go to my sister's funeral. And that's kind of my number one priority. So I love you guys, and I love all of you. I love you. Thank you so much.
Love you too, buddy. Thanks for coming
excited
on.
I've got my legislations hat on.
The Capitol Hill hat. Joanna, any final words?
Man, after hours for mom with kids and working and stuff is rough. I love you guys. I'm sorry if I was snappy. Like, it's past my bedtime, but recovery.
Johnny Fab, any final thoughts?
Please vote. Get out, know what you're elected, know what these individuals are taking office, how they stand on the issues that are important to you. I don't care if it's red, blue, whatever color it is, whatever way you vote, just if those issues those candidates are important to you, know what they are and vote. You have the power to do it. Go to our, it's pinned on the thing, the recoveryvoices.com/vote. Find out the laws in your state. And get registered. As we're coming up on the end of registration in a lot of states, get registered to vote and have your voice mean something. We need to get back to that platform. We need you to register to vote, and we need your vote. And again, I'll just hashtag it, Randy, and say, love you all. It's always great. And let's make space for everyone's voice in this, everyone's voice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mike Todd, what you got, buddy?
I was just letting everybody know I love them. I'll shut up. My nickname's Hush for a reason. I'll tell them that story one day.
One day we'll hear it again. They can listen. They can listen to it raw and effect.
Mike, isn't it after your bedtime? Did you take your medicine? How long you sat here an hour without changing that to pants?
Oh no.
No, whoa. I was going to say.
We were so friendly when we got on camera. Now it's all let's get ready to rumble.
Legislation hat.
I love you, Mike. I love you.
Legislation hat.
Thanks, Alex, so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been an absolute blast. I want to give a big shout out to our producer, Todd. Always doing a great job.
Thanks, Todd.
Randy, Joanna, Johnny, Mike. It's been a blast. This has been Getting the Herd. Appreciate all those watching, and have a great night. Peace out. Go vote. Register by October 13th.
Yes.
Tired of waiting, lost on while I'm sitting at home. Dream of a new destination, lust for something unknown. Oh, you better leave it alone. I'd rather get up and go. How long can I lie around waiting for it? Sometimes you gotta walk out the door. No limits, no ceiling, no crown. No pressure gonna hold me down. No stop until I break every rule. No limits to what I can do. No well, it's too far away. No border gonna stand in my way. No wall that I can't break through. No limits to what I can do.